Welcome, everybody. Thank you again for joining us today. As always, I'm very excited to share my guest with you. But before I do, I want to thank some people that we always thank. We want to thank brassandwinds.com, Aquin the Eskimo company. When we're looking for brass or woodwind instruments, we always start with brassandwinds.com. We think they're the best place to buy brass and wind instruments, and we suggest you give them a call. If you're interested in studying blues or jazz, there's two ways to study with us. One is Truer MU, a series of online classes where you can watch videos and learn on your own in your own pace. Or if you'd like to study with a person, you can go to willowschoolga.com. This is our in-person school where you can study piano, guitar, voice, almost anything you want. Check us out at willowschoolga.com. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to someone. When I was at Oberlin College and Conservatory back in the late 80s and early 90s, just getting my jazz feet under me for the very first time, I was fortunate to be in the company of a number of young people who were already well on their way. And one of those people was Jason Jackson, who I'm going to be talking with today. Now, currently he teaches trombone at the Juilliard School. He has toured with Ray Charles, acted as lead trombone in Dizzy Gillespie's All-Star Big Band, and he's been a member for 10 years of the Grammy Award-winning Vanguard Jazz Orchestra at the Village Vanguard. Jason Jackson, it's great to see you again. Welcome.
Great to be here. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing terrific.
Good.
So let's talk about you and the trombone. Your introduction to the trombone, from what I understand, was that they gave you one and saw what you could do with it.
Yeah, or there was one lying around and I picked it up and started playing on it, and I could get a few notes out. So my uncle was like, "Oh wow, nobody taught you how to do that?" And you just, he had this old horn. So I ended up kind of playing a lot, and then went to band when I got to elementary school. I played in band.
Yeah, and you were the jazz band at the Yucaipa Intermediate School. And this is what you said about that. You said that within your first year, you said, I wanted to play trombone in space. What does that mean?
Well, it's really two things. I really loved the idea of going into space as a kid, and I mean, I still love it. I'm still really fascinated with that, concept. And getting into a rocket ship and going up. But I knew I wanted to play trombone. So, I'd have my trombone with me and I'd play in space. So that's kind of, how I just, put all that together
that's
as
great.
As a kid.
I hope you get to be the first trombone player in space.
Well, at this point, if I can just get down the street, get some groceries.
So you studied at Oberlin College, the conservatory, actually. You were a jazz major there. And then you went on to New York City, where you got to study with Slide Hampton. And we're going to be talking about that later. Before we talk any more about your album, which is the main focus of our chat, I want to ask you, what are the particular challenges of playing the trombone as a jazz instrument? You don't hear it as a soloist as much. Why is that?
Well, I guess what are the particular challenges? And I guess you're inferring, since you don't hear it a lot, that there might be a connection. But what I would say is, first of all, there was a time in the I would say the development of jazz, the proliferation of jazz in America, that the trombone was an extremely important and featured a lot, probably more, in popular music and popular recordings. Just in general, music was more, acoustical, and there were times when the trombone was kind of king soloist. I mean, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, these bands, the trombone was very, very important. Duke Ellington featured the trombones, but now I think as a modern, trombone player, if you want to equate it, a lot of people have broken through that barrier, in terms of really being able to accomplish on the trombone what pretty much any other instrument, can do. There's people that spend a lot of time on that, professionals, like me, we work and try to be able to emulate that. But, I guess it's okay that it's not in style, but I would just say that it's kind of like it's just not the time right now. I think trombones are coming back.
Some of my audience may know, I hope it does. Some of my audience may know and some may not. So I want to talk about the specifics of the instrument really quickly for
Okay.
you and for them.
Yeah.
Almost all brass instruments use valves, the buttons that you push, and the
Right.
lips to control
Yeah.
the tone, mostly the
Yeah.
lips with the valves to assist. Trombone is the only instrument I'm aware of, except for maybe the sack butt, that uses a slide to control the pitch. Does this change what you have to do as a player?
Well, again, I'm coming from the perspective of pretty much always having a slide, so it's hard to say. But like this is what, if we're talking to people that are interested in what that exactly means, this is called a slide, and it's called a slide because the outer tube goes on this inner tube, and it actually has a lot of advantages, I would say, to making musical statements. Being, you can put a lot of glisses and certain things that uh, all other instruments have to try to emulate. We can really just do it. It's built in. So that's one fascinating thing that I think that I try to exploit. Um, but yeah, what it changes is there's a few things that do change with the slide. And again, one of them I think is the continuity of the tube as you go in and out. Whereas if you have a valve, what you're doing is you're all of a sudden you're switching from, this much tubing to this much tubing. And it's like a very quick, fast process. And it's a different thing than I think that the way that the slide moves, because it's just, even though eventually you are shortening and lengthening the tube that much, it's just a different movement. So it gives I would say, to me, it lends itself to being smoother, I would say, just intrinsically. But of course, all professional musicians work on getting whatever instrument they're playing to be able to play super smooth. But on the trombone, I think that's one thing that I think is advantageous, having the slide on that sense. The other sense is going from first to fifth. There's certain times when you want to play a note in first position and in fifth position, and those are the only places that you can play those two notes, and you have to go back and forth really quick. We've got to be honest. If you just have to do this, it's a lot easier than going, like this. So,
Right.
so that's a disadvantage. And so what you do with that is you really try to you move the slide like you're playing a drum. You don't think of the slide as, oh, I'm going to fourth and I'm going. You just think bap, bap. So every time you're moving to a slide position, you really want to be accurate and fast, but not rigid.
That's a great insight. I really like the drum connection. Well, let me turn the question around a little bit, ask you a slightly different way. When you were a kid in your high school orchestra, you had the chance to change over to tuba or to trumpet, and you didn't. What is it about the trombone that you love?
I would just say the sound. I just felt like it was this, this strong sound. And there weren't really a lot of live examples, but the examples that I heard were Sarah Vaughan, and on recordings, Sarah Vaughan and Miles Davis and Charlie Parker and Sonny Rollins and, John Coltrane. These were really, and some opera. My mother's Italian, so we had opera sometimes playing in the house, and just all kinds of music was interesting to me. And I think that the sound of the trombone somehow connected me with music, but it was definitely the sound, thought it was cool. And I could do it also as a kid. It was something, oh, wow, I felt, I could make a sound with this thing and I can make it do notes. So it was kind of like, it was fun. And I didn't really have that connection with the trumpet or the tuba or anything. Later on, I played some of those other instruments, but not right away.
Yeah. Well, you've obviously had a great connection with your sound. You've gotten a chance to play with lots of people. A short list includes Ron Carter, Jimmy Heath, McCoy Tyner. So you've done very well on your instrument. Yet as a side person, there was something that dissatisfied you just playing along with sidemen. And you said that you wanted to go ahead and go for it instead of just doing sideman gigs, and go for it meant create this record, Inspiration, that you have coming out. But going for it involved a 10-year process. That's usually a long time to go for it. What took so long?
Yeah, it was really that I started it and not really understanding the scope of what I was doing and not having all of the music done, like just done. I had some music done and I was like, I want to do this. And then within that process of getting, you know, um, 15 violins and 5 cellists and a big band of LA session musicians and famous engineers that have done movie scores. And I was presented with a lot of challenges, and it made me realize I kind of need to plan a little bit further ahead for something this big. So I just kind of slowed down. But what ended up happening is I just didn't really get back into that for whatever reason. It was work, really. I just dropped 20 grand, of my own money. Uh, I need to take a break, and earn some more money and write the rest of the music. But I also wanted to get a little bit more into myself because I felt in the process that I wasn't really comfortable taking the leadership role of like, no, this is what we want. And I was just kind of not really able to take suggestions or criticisms as well, I think too. And I think I needed to live with the music and just be really like, yeah, okay, that's cool, so I could get to a point to where I could just be open, but also know what I wanted to do. And I felt that it was time, as as 2014 came around, I felt like it was time to really finish that up, and then I did it within a year or so. I finished it up.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about that feedback. I mean, some of the players on this record include Roy Hargrove, Terrell Stafford, Slide Hampton, Michael Melvin on piano, Rufus Reed on bass, some huge players. Are these
Yeah.
some of the folks that gave you feedback, or were they just recording for you and you got it from other places?
I would say just early on, we did so. As you know, the record is almost 3 different sessions, but mainly 2 sessions, one in LA and the other main session was in my house. I recorded the rest of the record in my house. Of course, I hired, a brilliant engineer to mix it, and then another engineer to master it. But in any case, the first session was the one where I got some feedback from the person who was helping me, who his name is Eddie Karam, and he was very well known in the LA movie scene as a writer who would orchestrate for John Williams, and he did his own orchestrations as well. But there was he was a hired hand. So and you'll see his names on like Blade Runner. He did the music to that movie, for example, if you know
Wow.
that Harrison Ford movie.
Yeah.
And now I was great friends with his son, so he was, but it was just a whole different scene. I mean, I had never really been on the LA scene, and he was trying to get me to just not be so into the music and having it so perfect, all of the other stuff. And he wanted me just to do my thing, just do your thing. And I was kind of stuck on, yeah, but the time is a little bit weird here, that and he would tell me things like, well, don't worry about that, we'll fix it. And I really should have trusted that, but my instinct as a live musician at the time and being kind of young was like, no, we need to do this right. So I was right and wrong. I was right in the sense that, yes, it's okay to have the feeling that I had, to like, we got to just get this take right. That's okay. And that's a way to do it. But that's not how is another way to do it. And the way that they do it is great too. It's just a different thing. And I wasn't strong enough in my convictions, I think, that I was ready to do that, and I wasn't, like I said, I hadn't thought all the way to the end. But then by the time a few years had passed, 4 or 5, 6 years passed, then I realized, okay, I can see the end now. I started writing more music, I and did the arrangements, and then I jumped on it and just finished it up. But yeah. So that's kind of a long story, but yeah,
No, it's a great story.
I wasn't
Yeah.
ready to take it in a positive way, because I just didn't have an understanding of all of the moving parts, and I think that's okay. You live and you learn, and I'm very proud of the record, just that I finished it and that I've involved some of my favorite musicians. I just think that it was well worth it, even though it took me a long time. You know, I'll probably never do something like that again.
I
I
don't
will
think you
admit,
can.
you know,
I
but
mean, when you do a record like that that involves your younger self and your older self because of the
yeah,
time, there's only one record like that in your life,
yeah.
you know.
So it was a great process. It was good.
Yeah. And so you get some of, like you said, there are two ways to do it, and they are both valid. The
Yeah,
trusting your instincts and being sure you can assert yourself and make sure that somebody doesn't just walk over you and say, yeah, we'll fix it in the mix,
yeah,
versus, hey, I've been doing this a long time. Can you trust me?
yeah,
And
yeah,
you were
yeah,
able to get both of you on that record.
yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. And
That's true.
inspiration is kind of a fun title for this, given that it took so long. You would think of an inspiration as being sort of quick. And in fact, you know,
Yes. Well, Sam was the inspiration. That was
I see.
my good friend who died. I lived with him in high school. We were in a boarding school, and we had a dorm room together. And we were the cats. We were the jazz cats. We put on our sunglasses, and I played trombone, and we play like a Blue Monk or something, and just jam, and the girls would be like, oh look, so we were a little team, but he got MS, and it was very aggressive, and he passed away, and I wrote a song for him called Sam's Requiem, and I changed the name to My Friend Sam, because Requiem is so, it's kind of his dad was like, well, that's kind of a, but that was for him,
Yeah.
and so that was the inspiration, and
And it's the last tune on the record.
yeah.
This is a beautiful record. It
Well, thank
sounds
you.
wonderful. The music is great. And I want to talk about some specific tracks that really stuck out for me. Um,
Okay.
First of all, Spring is Here. That's got to be, I think, my favorite.
Okay.
The arrangement is spectacular. And this is a
Yes.
tune that I don't really like to play. It's a little awkward. The melody's a little strange, but
Yes.
the arrangement is just gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, let me see. That's probably one of my favorites too. Again, it was at the hand of Sam's father, Eddie Karam, the
Mhm.
movie writer, who explained to me how he writes is that um, his music is the frame to the picture of what you're seeing, whatever your picture is, and that's his music has to be the frame to frame that picture. Um, so he was just really, creating these beautiful sounds, and just what it was so great to work with him, because he just loved these beautiful sounds too. He just enjoyed that process, and it was, the way that he moved the harmony around. Just I really connected with his arrangement of that tune. I think too, as well. Um, and I don't know what else to say about it. I still practice that melody because it's just a good warm up. Like sometimes I'll just play it and maybe go up a half step because it goes up to a high D on the trombone, which, like I said, nowadays you have trombone players that can just play all melodies up above that in a high B flat,
Right.
albeit kind of, not with the sound of that I prefer on a trombone, but that's what you got to do when you're squeaking up there. But for me, I don't play in the super. I practice there, but I don't really play there a lot super high. So this is my meaty high range, and so I enjoy that. That's my new thing now. I'm just playing melodies and playing them all over the horn in different keys. All of the keys, and just trying to just play more melodies.
Yeah.
And I think I gravitate towards that way in playing, which is another connection to that tune "Spring Is Here,"
Yeah.
just melodic.
Well, you're an arranger too. As an arranger, what do you think? These Hollywood guys, these guys that do nothing but arrange, there's something, you can hear it in them. There's a sort of a polish that just nobody else gets.
Yeah,
What is it that they've got?
Well, I think part of it is an understanding of the instruments that you're writing for, and how you can, you can kind of interlay them and stack them, and just kind of knowing like this, like the bass clarinet playing a D flat, and then the flute over here, at least for that particular arrangement, you can just tell. And then at the end, he actually added this chord at the end, that's just this beautiful chord. And he's like, oh yeah, he's like in the studio, he thought of it. Let's do it. Okay, you play that. And then the way that he voiced the brass again, which I think I have a little bit of understanding of, but that I think is a good writer, when they can really hear in their heads how it's going to sound, not just the notes on a piano either. It's also the different colors of the notes, because it just, all of that adds to the sound. It's not just the pitches or the rhythm, it's also the sound of the bass clarinet and the bass trombone and the muted trumpet.
Yeah.
What does that sound like? And these writers that write in Hollywood, they're really, I would say, probably some of the best at that kind of writing, because they're really trying to stretch how many different kinds of sounds they can get to be appropriate to whatever, some producer would be like, I don't like that. Can you make that more, like, so they have to have all of these skills in their pocket. And yeah, Eddie told me just write every day. He said, just write every day, like you practice every day.
Yeah. Let's talk about El Huesero, which
Yes.
swings really hard. It has some nice variety. I looked this up. El Huesero means the bone setter. Is there anything
Well,
meaningful in that?
it means the bull.
The bull.
Yeah, bull.
Oh.
Huesero.
So Google
So,
Translate led me astray.
yeah. So at least that's how my friend Evan Christopher put it.
Okay.
So I guess he thinks of me as her, so, but yeah, it has a beautiful song, and I've always loved Evan's beautiful creativity and just his intensity of just what he wants. Like, it's not, you just enjoy that about a person, even if they want something that you're like, why does he want that? But just, wow, look, he's just going for me. He's like, and he's really, he's like, this is what his clarinet is a particular kind of clarinet. And, like his ideas of, you talk about avant-garde, and he's like, that's the way that they use it today. They don't even really know what the word means. He's like, so he's very, very much into being specific about the music and his intent. And I really appreciate that about his playing. And I just love, he swings and he has fun. Pretty much anybody who enjoys playing music, I can vibe with pretty cool. Like, I like that when people are enjoying playing music or listening to music. I can connect with that person usually.
Yeah, I think that comes across.
Yeah.
April in Paris. This is your arrangement, and I love it. Now, April in Paris, I think, really lends itself to arrangements as a tune. There are a lot of wonderful different approaches to this tune. It's just constructed perfectly for experimenting and changing the chords. Yours is really interesting. There's a combined bossa and swing simultaneously kind of feel going on, which is really radical. I love it. It's very cosmopolitan. There's a nice percussion break. What were your goals in arranging this?
I think I heard it in minor. I was playing around in minor, the relative minor. So, at most people who are listening to this who even don't know anything about music, you understand, you can hear when something is sad, when you're watching a TV show, that's going to be in a minor key. It's kind of like you get this sad kind of feeling, and then the major key is up. So I thought, let me play this song, but have it be played the same notes, but in the relative minor. And then from there, I just kind of found my way with the arrangement. It kind of wrote itself once I got the groove, which was more to me, more like a Elvin Jones kind of 12/8 kind of feel, like when you said the swing with and then I knew that I wanted it to have a fast, solo section. So it just all seemed to lend itself together. One of the things I thought of early when I wrote this record was to have songs that really grab into different feels, like very different. Like one of the things I wanted to do was a tango, and that's kind of where the El Huesero, even though it's not that, but it, I was just trying to fit these kind of general ideas of, okay, real swinging, real and really, because I do so many different styles of music. That's my daughter.
That's fine.
And so I wanted to do that, and this was also one of the reasons why I thought that I wanted it to have that Latin, like I wanted it to be kind of from Afro-Cuban. Right. So that's then how I got into the son, kind of like the son clave and the and then I also borrowed some ideas from Jim McNeely, who writes a lot for the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, which one of the things that he's done, and he wasn't the first to do it, but that's kind of how I got introduced to it, having repeated notes, but in different rhythms. And sometimes he'll write a specific rhythm and then it will degrade into improvisational rhythms. I guess Brookmeyer is where he got it from, Bob Brookmeyer. Um, and so I did that, but I kind of wrote out the rhythms to kind of have this kind of undulating rhythmic pattern that kind of sticks out of this very rigid kind of ding, 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 you know, kind of Latin kind of thing. So yeah, I think all of that, piled it all in there, and then got Roy Hargrove to play an amazing solo, you know, and that was it. You know, I did my solo in the living room with this mic right here.
All right.
And that was cool. You know, it was nice also to have the comfortability to record at home, just to break off of that, you know, to do, because I could take the time, you know, to do some takes and even fix a couple of notes, you know, just because I think that's I'm okay with that, you know, and sometimes I need it. You know?
Right. You mean to fix something?
Yeah,
of course.
But you know, I mean, there's some musicians who, you know, studio musicians in particular, where they're really kind of extra careful. So, and some of these guys in New York are the same way, you know. And as more of a live player, I didn't really I've done some dates in the studio, but you know, I'm just, you know, it's just there's just a higher level of accuracy that is demanded, and also everybody around them is doing that too. So it's kind of you know, I would say, you know, like Mike Davis and Jim Pugh. These guys are just some of the top call. They, you know, New York. Well, Jim's gone now, but so that's kind of a different way of playing. But it lends itself to, you know, they don't make too many crack notes and mistakes, you know.
Right.
But I'm thinking of the like playing at 3 a.m. up in you know, like Las Vegas, this Latin club, you know, where people are screaming, yelling, and drinking, and you're like playing. You've got the bass like booming through the loud. I mean, this is how I kind of started in New York, playing these clubs, doing these Latin gigs, you know, and just blasting away, and just, you know, being perfect was just not really part of the sound. Not that there aren't great players that have played on that in that music and been pristine, because that's
right.
that they are there, but it just wasn't, you know, how I ever really approached music. You know, I always thought of it as, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. That's just how, you know, but you know, as a professional playing on Broadway, there's a certain level that I have to achieve, you know, but it's a different way of playing than when I'm soloing. But yeah, I took on that one in particular on the April in Paris. I definitely fixed a couple of things as I remember, but it was cool to be able to do that, because I didn't want to have to, you know, record all night. I was getting tired. My chops getting tired. Let me just fix that note. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I mean, the audience is going to be listening to this CD again and again and again. So if there's something that isn't working, it's never going to be working. It's going to be messed up every time. Yeah. So if you want to capture that live sound, you can fix the mistake and you still have your live sound with a fixed mistake. Yeah. And I think in contrast of, for instance, my two go-to piano players in terms of contrast in that regard, you've got Bud Powell on the one hand, who was really never afraid or because of his mental illness, couldn't discern mistakes that he was making. He just went for it. He just dove in every time. Yeah. And I'm so grateful he did that, because I love hearing that. That's like my prime inspiration of piano playing, versus Bill Evans, who I love Bill Evans. And yet there's always the sense that Bill Evans, by the end of his career, he was not going to make a mistake in front of you. So you get this beautiful, pristine sound. And that for me, I'm wondering, where's Bill? So both are there. There's value in both. Absolutely. But I am very grateful to Bud Powell for being kind of the other end of that spectrum, where I can listen and I can say, there's the juice. This is what I'm trying to do when I sit down to play. And it's on a record.
Yeah, that's true. There are different ways of approaching a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's music. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what of these tunes that we haven't talked about do you love that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I definitely really love Spring Is Here. Let me see. I think Tenderly, as far as just blowing me away to watch Slide Hampton just kind of write all these juicy, beautiful harmonies. And have to say, some of the Hollywood, some people probably thought it was gratuitous, some of the harmonic movement, but you know, you've got to understand, we're talking about Slide Hampton, who went through, you know, jazz has come a long way. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. So I just embraced it, you know, but just a lot of beautiful, I wouldn't say chromatic, but just, you know, movements of thirds, minor, major thirds, and then fourths and half steps, and just taking chords this way. It was just really probably, I asked if I could copy the scores, and I, you know, would check out the scores. So that arrangement that Slide did, I thought was really beautiful. And I thought we could have used, like, even though we did that one in LA, but then I didn't really personally, again, part of it was me, but I didn't like the way that it came out. I thought it was just a little bit too slow in that version. So I decided to re-record that along with Brazilian Bop, because I felt like I wanted to get a different sound, you know. That sound was beautiful for Spring Is Here, you know, and but for those tunes, I wanted something a little bit more like New York, you know, like because like I said before, I wanted these tunes that were in different, you know, from different kinds of feels. I would say that's the main vibe, the feel. I wanted them to be as close to what that real feel would be. You know, I ended up not getting, I mean, my vision was to have like a samba drum ensemble that I saw when I was in Brazil, like literally 100 people in a room banging on all kinds of different size drums, and then people on stage singing and everybody just yelling and singing and just dancing and just smiling and just, I mean, the way that I saw how people showed life in Brazil was just like, and some of these people probably dirt poor, you know, don't, you know, maybe, you know, or, you know, certainly there was a lot of poverty around. So there, but anyway, just the joy, you saw that in everybody there. And that's what I envisioned. I ended up just having like a traditional, you know, bass drums, piano, trying to do the grooves. But in that sense, it was too far away from what I wanted. I think what I got in LA, from what I was really going for, you know, in terms of my original idea. So I think that's why I chose to do those again. And Slide's arrangement, I thought maybe, like I said, they were a little, the conductor was a little bit like, well, you know, there's all this, and well, they cut the arrangement. They made it shorter, you know, and I wanted to do the whole thing. I'm like, this is Slide Hampton, you know, how many orchestral, you know, stuff do people have on their record from Slide Hampton writing, you know, and playing on it and conducting, you know. So I ended up doing that again. And I think that's one of my favorite arrangements, just in terms of how, you know, all the flavors of sound, you know. But it was interesting. Some of the comments that I got from Eddie about Slide's arrangement on that too was just like things that he might have a little bit more insight into, like string writing and writing, like when you have four violas, writing like a different note for everybody, you know. And he just thought that, well, that, you know, but you know what, that's okay, you know, it's just a different sound. If you want warm, luscious from that kind of writing, it's not going to happen. That's a very different sound, and I was okay with that, you know. But I understood that kind of feeling of like, well, you know, because I probably wouldn't be so adventurous as to write, you know, like that for strings. When I deal with strings, I'm just like, okay, look, the basics, you know, just stack them up, let them do their shimmery thing, you know. But Slide was you know, doing this with like 4 different notes in the violins, you know, and I only have 4 firsts and 3 seconds, you know. They're like,
so for the audience, this is unusual. Typically you don't split violas up at all, or you split them up into 2 notes at most, because they tend to be a weaker instrument, and they if you split them up, then you're really thinning them out. So it's a risky move as an arranger.
So I think, you know, there were valid criticisms, but it needed to be done under Slide's baton and with New York musicians, you know, for me, you know. So
you re-recorded it with new musicians.
Yes, LA was like all LA cats. I had Bill Watrous and George Bohannon, you know.
Oh wow, I'd like to hear the other version to compare. That would be really interesting.
It's pretty interesting to compare. I mean, I do have to say, I love my New York strings, and they can swing, but the string section in LA was kind of pristine. It was really like super pristine, which is kind of what I feel like I like to hear from a string section.
Yeah.
And you know, but the rhythm section, that pristineness, I didn't necessarily always want to hear on certain things, you know.
Mhm.
But just beautiful playing. Everybody just beautiful. It was just a different way, I think, a different sound I was going for. But yeah, I have to say that was probably the most, you know, and of course the brass, you know, everybody was on. I will say this too, and not many people know this, but Eddie Karam, you know, being in LA, and this was back in, I guess I started it in what, 2003 or so. I forget when that date was, but early 2000s. And I told Eddie, because he was helping me get the musicians, you know, and I said, I don't want to see a sea of white faces when I walk into my recording session. I said, I know there are, you know, musicians of all colors that can play this music. And he pushed back in a sense, not for the concept of having minorities, but just to say, look, you know, if you want it to sound good, his point was, we have to get people that can play together. And I said, if you can play in time and you can play in tune, you can play together, you know, because a lot of times people use that as an excuse. And I'm like, well, that to not get other musicians. And again, it was something I learned a little bit later too. He's talking about, you know, and it happens in all scenes in New York too. It's like there's a group, there's a clique, and they work well together, you know. But we can't really. I was not prepared to get a click sound to not include other people into the recording, and I made that specific. So I was really glad that I had a very diverse, you know. I mean, that wasn't at all an issue in New York, but it was a little bit of an issue in LA, you know, and you know, and it's not necessarily anybody's fault, but to me, you know, since this is big on the news, you know, race relations, and, you know, and a lot of people are reacting kind of like, you know, oh, they're going a little overboard, you know, because, you know, it's really, and you know, you really do have to go overboard. I mean, the extent to really have people, because, you know, as a minority in the music business, you know, anytime I was aware that I'm the only, you know, person of a different hue in this band on this gig right here, time and time again, you know, in pits and on whatever gigs I did, in certain situations. So, and it didn't at all enter into my doing the gig or how I related with people. It was just, you know, a checkbox in my head. This is not as diverse as I would like it to be, you know? So I always worked hard by bringing in, yes, I would bring in subs for my shows when I'd have a Broadway show that'd been in the business many years, and you know, they're going to get gigs. So they'll call you if you call them. I had those people on my list, but I also had people that may not have done a show ever, or had done one, but was, you know, a minority, you know, or female or whatever. And I always made that part of how I chose my subs. And I got pushback again from some of my colleagues. Look, it's a business. If you want to work, you have to get people that are going to get you work, you know, what, you know, but I just think that, you know, that was just a choice that I made, and maybe I didn't work as much as I had, you know, and I certainly had some conflicting experiences playing on Broadway with, you know, certainly, especially later on as I got older and less like wanting to just go along with everything. But, you know, that happens in any work, in any job you have to deal with that kind of thing. So it's not, you know, anything out of the ordinary, but yeah. So that was one thing that I had that happened in LA. I had to say, I want to have, and we did it, and I was really proud of that, you know.
You clearly, I'm really glad you went through all that. You've obviously given this a lot of thought, and it's of course true that these musicians are professionals and they're going to work very well with whoever is in the room.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, and yet we can't deny the realities of how these cliques get formed and how these people end up playing together and who has the advantages to get there and who doesn't. So these are all things that you took into account.
I'm comfortable talking about it.
Let's talk about some people that have inspired you. Let's start with J.J. Johnson, who you got to work with at Oberlin College.
Yes. What an inspiration. I mean, just first of all, you listen to his playing. Pristine, just really, you can tell and he talks a little bit about this. People write about him talking about this. He really had a good background too in classical music, like I did, in the sense of how, to really sustain the sound and breathe and just really get that sound, just a wonderful sound, and so clean, but yet still, with a great, beautiful vibe, swinging, all that. So that's the first thing. And then just as a person, he was just such a sweet person and just so unassuming. It was almost, being young, I so much of how I felt towards him was because of who I was at 20, 21. I don't remember how old I was, but early 20s. And it was just, first of all, this giant of who kind of helped me form what I thought a trombone should sound like and how to improvise and all that, was just so humble. It was just hard for me to wrap my head around. Like, I couldn't step out of myself and see him just as a person, just being the way he was. And so yeah, that was just weird. And now that I look back on it, I see, how I kind of idolized him in such a way, but it kind of got in the way sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't get away with him teaching me or our relationship, but just me being more, asking more questions and just being, because I see that in some young people, like when Michael Deese was just playing in New York for a while, just like he would come up to me and ask me all these questions, and he was already like a super, advanced trombone player, but just asking all, just going right up to be comfortable, just getting into people's, and I wasn't that type of a person. So, but just, what, just so unassuming. And I once I sat down and I said, do you realize that you have pretty much affected, and almost all trombone players that ever existed know who you are, and that you've influenced them somehow? Because not just jazz musicians listen to JJ. I mean, it's like classical musicians appreciate, all kinds of musicians. It's like, oh no, that's he was like, no. And I was like, what's going on here? But he was just being humble and just being, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about music, So yeah, but it was just I just love listening to him play. I'm working on a solo right now, Tune Up,
Mm-hmm.
that actually one of my students did for his recital. But it's like these licks that he'll do, like and it's like the way he'll skip notes in there. He's playing every note. Like he's not, if I can say, BSing. He's, he knows what he's doing, and it takes, he opens up my ear when I dig inside of what he's playing. It really opens up my ear
Yeah.
to the possibilities. Still to this day.
Ray Charles.
What can I say? I mean, a genius. Inspiration. Every night I was in my mid-20s, traveling all over the world. Like we'd be in Slovakia, and then we'd be in Japan, and then we'd be in Russia, and then we'd be in London, and this cat would come out every night and sing Georgia, and I would get goosebumps. And I thought, this is different, this is something. So there's something to music that's not just playing the notes, because he could have easily, phoned any of that in, and nobody probably would have known the difference, but he was giving himself totally. And it was really that kind of helped me, I think, in my gigs as a musician in the pits. Being able to, Ray did it. He was playing the same thing every night. He would, obviously it's not like playing in a show, but you can kind of get into that when you're talking about he's on the road every year. He's got this one book, but yeah, that was just really profound for me to see. And just that experience of being on the road and young, and I had a, I don't want to get into all that, but it was fun.
Oh no, I gotta ask. You got to at least mention it now. You've put the hand up. What is it?
I'm married now, but
I see.
one of my girlfriends was in the band too. She was a Raylette.
Okay.
So sweet lady, and could sing you know, beautifully. And it's funny, I ended up marrying a singer. My wife is a singer. Just I mean, amazing. You know, I guess I gravitate towards, you know, really great singers, I guess. I don't know. But Reggie was great too. Super light, high voice. She did the high part in the and you know, just to be out and having a good time, you know, having dinner. I didn't make any money, and I had to ask for a raise from Ray Charles twice. The first time, the cats in the band were like, yeah, go ahead. I hope he doesn't fire you. Like, they were giving me all this, and I was like, look, I'm losing money on the road. I love this gig. I love playing with Ray, but I'm paying for $700 a month for an apartment in New York, a studio, you know, and it's just not. I mean, this band was rough. It was dues. You had to pay. You'd have a line to get your check to your money. They give you a little envelope. Then there would be another line you'd have to get back in. That would be to pay back Ray for the room that you were in. If you were on the road, or if you were in the States, you just checked into the hotel with your own credit card and you paid for your rooms. So that was the kind of gig it was. And I just like, okay, I like this gig, but I just feel like I'm being taken advantage of a little bit. And I have to make just this little bit more money so that I don't, you know, go under.
Right.
You know, so I knocked on Ray's door and they got me a meeting with Ray, and I went in there and I said, hi, I'm all nervous. You know, I'm scared, thinking I'm going to be fired. Hey, Mr. Charles, you know, I really love playing in the band, but I've got rent to pay in New York, and I got my school loans, and I'm just, you know, with all the money that's spending on the hotels and the food, I'm not able to make any money. You know, he's like, well, how much do you need? That's all he said right after said that. I said, well, I was thinking of $100 a week, you know, and I kicked myself because I could have asked for anything. Could have asked for 1,000 more a week. But he says, okay. And that was it. And I said, oh, okay. And I walked out. And a couple weeks later, I got $100 more in my check every week. And dig this, the whole band got $100 more a week.
Oh, wow.
The band got a raise. So I don't think anybody knew that I had asked for one, but I think that they probably realized, you know, we're not really paying these people enough money to be out here on the road. And, you know, and then I was in there for about 1.5 years, and it was getting to the point to where, you know, you had to room with somebody, and I had this chain smoking alcoholic as a roommate. So I just said, I can't do this anymore. Let me just go ask for another raise and he'll fire me. They gave me the raise. So I was like, oh. So I ended up having to quit. I quit the band, you know, and it was just wonderful. Ray Charles, what an inspiration, you know, and just like I said, just every night he would give me goosebumps when he sang Georgia, you know.
Great story.
Just beautiful stuff.
Roy Hargrove.
Roy, just, man, what an amazing, again, inspiration. He would go out every night. Every night he would go out, man. I'm, you know, he's gone now, but he really meant a lot to me to see a musician who was at the top of his game, touring around with his own band, but going out to play every night. You know, it was an inspiration. Sorry, I was just thinking of him the other day, and it's getting me a little heightened, but he really was an inspiration. Everybody around him knew that he would always go out and play, you know, and it was kind of that relationship with music that you see with geniuses, you know, that's they're totally encompassed, you know, with the music. It was his life, you know. So, and that was just really profound to be around him, you know, and he gave me a shot. You know, there was a lot of young cats out there playing their butts off, and, you know, we're nipping at his heels to be in his band, I'm sure, but he let me play in it. I was a little bit older, and, you know, but he had worked with me in the Dizzy band, I think, and he knew that I could be consistent on lead, you know, and still play some solos, I guess, or maybe he just I don't know. He didn't really talk much, but he let me play. Let me just say that he let me be in his band, and I was grateful for that, you know. And we had a good time, man. We hung a lot. You know, when we went to Thailand. Oh my God. I definitely can't talk everything about Thailand here, but let me just say, the last night we were there, it was the Dizzy band. It wasn't with Roy's band, but I worked a lot with Roy in the Dizzy Gillespie big band, probably even more than his band. And the last night we were in Thailand, it was me, him, and Greg, and we were sitting there looking out our hotel room to the ocean, to this just sun setting, and it was just warm and beautiful, the breeze, and we had this beautiful time, music and the people and great gigs. And we were just like, we do not want to leave this place. Like all of us were thinking and feeling that, but Roy always had this kind of like higher sense of everything, you just, and you could see it in how he could hear things in music and how he played, but just in life, he seemed to have that, so it was just, I was just blessed to have that influence in my life, and it was so great that he played him a record. Again, it was like, I just went up to him, hey, could you record? He's like, yeah, okay, well, how much would you want? And then, he totally gave me a break. When I told his manager how much he charged me, he almost, dropped his mouth. He's like, cause he just, he just said a little bit of amount, and I was like grateful to give it to him. And, yeah, that was just a great person, very, very kind of, I would say he wasn't just like out there to everybody. He was kind of a insular person, with certain people, but you knew his family and, he was very close, but he definitely had this relationship with music that kind of like, that was, you could tell it was encompassing of his world, so you were always like secondary to his woman, music for sure, but that was beautiful. That was great.
Slide Hampton.
Slide, my teacher, my mentor when I moved to New York. Again, another master of the music, jazz masters. Just a brilliant writer, a brilliant improviser. I wrote a grant to the National Endowment of the Arts to study with Slide. So I just called him up out of the blue. Hi, my name's Jason Jackson. I'm going to be going to school in New York, and I would love to study with you. And can I see if I can get a grant to study with you? And he asked me a couple questions. He's like, yeah, I think that'd be cool. That'd be all right. So that's kind of how I got introduced to Slide. And I would go up to his apartment on like 52nd and like 9th Avenue or 8th Avenue. It was called the Ellington Building is what it was called. And he had an apartment there. Excuse me. And sometimes I would go and he would just have a tank top and he'd just be watching TV, and complaining about, all these people with guns. And, he was very, very political and very, very like not into the whole, he was just very, I guess, progressive and just, about people just, trying to do positive, more positive than some of the stuff they were seeing politically. But with playing wise, we would go through stuff and he'd show me things and he's hired me for his band. I'm just this youngster in New York and I got to play with his Jazz Masters big band and actually saw JJ on a gig we did. But I was with Robin Eubanks playing in the section and Doug Purviance, and there was like Lou Soloff and I didn't know any of these people. I had never played with these people. I was just, coming from Oberlin. And it was just kind of overwhelming. It was such a beautiful to be, to be him giving me that, it's like here, so just appreciative of his mentorship and his teaching. And most of what I got from him is playing wise is just by listening to him play and transcribing his solos, but just he gave me a lot of opportunities, and he's always so positive. Just so complimentary. Oh man, no, you're really good. You're really playing it, like just always positive, even though at his age, he would be practicing twice as much as me on the road. Like he would be in his room practicing and I'd be hanging out, going to a jam session or, going to see some sights, you're in Switzerland, I'm 20 something. Oh, let me go do something, but he was in his room shedding, that work ethic was just off the charts. Really, really, again, just way off the charts. It's something you see in geniuses, I think.
Sam Karam.
Sam, my good buddy, my friend, incredible talent. This kid, his father was a writer in Hollywood. He had perfect pitch. He played the Mozart clarinet concerto like he could solo with the New York Phil, and then he played the alto like it was just a little pan flute. He would just eat it up like it was just, it was just and just fun. I mean, we just had fun. He would be over at my house, and we would always, we'd take girls on dates together, and um, just a really positive, fun guy. I think his parents being in the music industry, just like probably my kids thought of me when I was working when we didn't have a pandemic. My dad's always gone, so he had a lot. We bonded in a boarding school together, and he didn't have that. My mother was always there because she was a teacher. In any case, whatever the dynamic, that he was just so loving and just accepting, and we were we were really tight as friends, and I'll always remember, those smiles and those laughs. Just crazy kid. I loved him. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I've noticed from this talk as we come to a close is that you have inspiration and vision in your work. You know not just what musically you're looking for, but you know what the feeling is that you want. You care about the results, which puts you in a different realm. I'm not insulting other musicians, but I will say that it's a rare thing when someone both cares about the music that they're creating and has the technical ability to execute that.
Well, I've seen it. Like I said, I've had examples of people that were so passionate, about the music, and I have to thank my mom too. She, as a kid, raising me alone as a single parent, she made sure that I had all of the opportunities that any other kid had, because a lot of people think that, you're automatically at a deficit for having, only one parent. But the reality is it's who your parents are that matters. It's not how many you have, whether you have 10 or 1. And I was better off than plenty of other people with 2 parents. I know that. So, but part of it was just that she was an educated person, and she exposed me to all. She made sure that I got an opportunity to go to a boarding school with Sam when I was just a kid. And that, she said, "Oh no, you're going to college. You're going to go to college at, whatever you want to do after that, but you're going to get a degree, And I think that, it's a certain way of thinking, people are evolving on that way of thinking, but that was how that was what my basis for how I went out into the world was. And I think that was, I'm lucky to have had that, really, yeah, and she's pretty incredible person, and all of my mentors, that have really helped me, Doug Provience in the Vanguard Band. My first Broadway sub was with Cats. He did Cats for so many years, and I got to sub on bass trombone in that, so it's just, yeah. So, I mean, I've just had these examples of people, and I kind of draw that, but yeah, I think it was always inside of me. My mother always says, because her father was Sicilian, she's very emotional. She does. She cries like anytime, something happy or sad, she'll the waterworks, very intense and very like that, that, that I'm passionate too that way, some of that has gone to me for whatever reason, so I definitely have that, but I also have a reservedness about me, but I definitely have this passionate part of me, and this kind of like want to working things out part of me, like, digging down and figuring out, okay, well, what did he play on that, that D, half diminished or whatever, so I try to balance it, but my kids just totally threw all of that out. It's all about them now. It's really not about me anymore. I mean, this is all fun to talk about, but that was me. Now I got kids. So, I mean, I still love music, and I still sit down here at night when everybody's asleep and put my practice mute on and do my scales and do my keys, and, because that's what I do, and I have to be ready when the work comes. And I did fall off of that for a while with the pandemic, kind of put me in a weird spot for a while. No gigs, how long is this going to go on? What is it going to look like when music comes back? These are all still important questions, But I'm glad I'm now really kind of embracing this time, and I'm really kind of improving more than I have in a while, because I'm just able to every night, come down here and just do my thing. And so I'm just rambling on, but
No,
sorry, you
oh,
you asked me a question and I talked
I
about
asked,
10 different things.
you're answering it, and I'm so glad you've included your mother and your kids as part of the inspiration, because
Oh yeah.
they weren't people on my list. So I'm really glad
Yeah,
you included
yeah,
them.
for sure, for sure. And thank you for having me here. This is a wonderful opportunity to just get, to put my thing out there. It's all my own project, so I don't have big money people behind it. So this helps me to just get my music out there. And I appreciate all of you listening, just support, Adam and what he's doing. It's a beautiful thing to bring, to bring the different perspectives from people who are doing things in the music industry is really important, especially now when we all need everybody to kind of understand what we do, so that when we say we can't work right now, people understand what that means, because people don't really understand it, but when they see it through the eyes, when they know what we do, it'll help them to understand, how severely impacted our industry is right now, from, it's kind of sad. It's kind of like an afterthought, in a sense. Everybody knows that it's incredibly it's a bad thing. I forget what I was trying to say, but it's just kind of like, well, it's a consequence of it, but it's people's, this, a lot of us are like, what's going on? But it's coming back slowly. And I think if we all do our part to help try to embrace the science of, social distancing and masking and washing your hands, will be cool. I mean, that's the way I see it. And I think we will. We are, getting there, so and when we do that, that's when the work will come back, and we'll just have to see. It won't be as much as it was, because that's just what happens in this society of where there are spaces to be filled. People who can fill those spaces and make money will fill them. And it happened after 9/11. I don't know if you noticed, but everything never all came back to what it was before that. And this is going to be the same thing. So I'm really proud that a lot of our leaders are making it an issue. They didn't do it as much when 9/11 had happened, but now they're like stepping up and saying, look, the artistic community is really hurting here. It's like, I heard a statistic like 60% more than other, I don't know, but in other words, it makes sense, right? We're the last ones to come back. And I just want to come back as much as we can, as soon as we can, so I can figure out, because even me, I'm like figuring out, am I going to be able to stay here and pay my mortgage? If I don't start working a lot really soon, the mortgage company is going to be like, okay, yeah, it's been long enough. Everybody else is back to work. It's time to start paying, right? Because, everybody else is kind of getting, not musicians. How are you going to fill up a theater, 1,000-seat theater with 1,000 people with COVID going on? It's a difficult issue. And that people are just like, well, we got to go. We got to keep going. We got to keep moving. Sorry, you'll come back when you do, how you can. So that's where we're at right now. So, buy my CD, it helps.
How can people find out about you?
My website, it's my name, Jason Jackson, trombone.com. That's it. So JASON, JACKSON, TROMBONE.com in your web browser. And all my CDs are there. And my, there's not much itinerary now, although in August we have a gig coming up with the Dizzy Band in Central Park. So if you're in Central Park, come on out. I think it's August 6th or 7th. But yeah, that's you can book a lesson if you want to hear more about, being a musician in New York, or you want to work some stuff out in your horn. So yeah, or just chime in, give me an email. Let me know how you're doing. All right.
Jason, you've been a leader as a musician, and you've been a leader as an arranger, and now you can be a leader as we come back to COVID. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today, and just thank you for what you do. I appreciate it.
Me and you. Thank you. All right.
And we want to thank you too. Jason did a nice job of thanking our audience. We love you. Thank you so much for watching these videos. If you've missed some of our other videos, please check out Tom Wehrman, the producer of Cheap Trick. That was a really fun one. We've got Mother's Finest in 3 parts. We've had some great interviews, and we want you to find them, and we want you to like them, and we want you to subscribe. So if you have any questions for me, you can reach me at adam@willowschoolga.com. Thank you, folks, and we'll see you next time.